I am called to a higher level and position in life, as she is too.
Yeah.
And you can't run from that because we married now.
Right.
You see what I mean? But the only way that we have an opportunity to pour on grace is through communication and saying, baby, I don't have it. This is my weakness. I'm just being completely transparent.
That's not the only way.
Okay.
That's not the only way.
And I want to learn from you guys.
And the other way is to create the environment where you can have grace while learning.
You are absolutely correct.
So to your point, there's grace that needs to happen in doing, and there's grace that needs to happen in the learning of doing. In 5, 4, 3.
Action.
Welcome back. I'm Heath.
I'm Bernie.
And it's the Heath and Bernie Show. Yeah. What's up, people? I'm Heath. This is Bernie. We are a Black Christian married couple, been married 26 years, been working with couples for 24 of those years. And what do you do when you meet someone, fall in love, and you're both very strong-willed people? At some point in time in the future, there's going to come a place where you have a power struggle, a time of intersection of when you have issues that you got to deal with. So what do you do when those issues happen? You have to adjust. And today, we are going to be talking to our wonderful couple, the beautifully big-hearted Sean and Latavia Nickols. Give a shout out to them. Yay.
Hello,
Sean and Latavia Nickols are joining us today. They're good friends of ours. We've been knowing them for several years. They are part of the couples group that we have been talking about, that we've been mentoring. And so go ahead and introduce yourselves and let us know like how long you've been married and so forth, like that, stuff like that.
Okay. My name is Latavia Nickols. I'll let my husband introduce himself. We've been married for 3 years, going on 4 in July.
Okay.
So we're still a very young couple.
Yes,
very young couple.
yes.
We had a short courtship.
Oh, okay.
We courted for maybe a year in total. And then we got engaged and we're here through the pandemic. So
so y'all pandemic couple.
We are a pandemic.
Pandemic.
Y'all pandemic couple is different. Y'all got y'all have a completely different history than a regular non-pandemic couple. But go ahead, Sean.
It's going on 4 years. It feels like maybe 7 or 8. But I'm Sean Nichols Sr. We, as Tavia said, we're going on 4 years. Collectively, we have 4 kids, 12, 10, 2, and 5 months. The oldest 2 are from a previous marriage of mine, so we're a blended family.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. We've known you all. I don't think I knew you all before y'all came to the couples group. How did you all get affiliated with that?
Through our good friends Danielle and Alan.
Okay.
We were friends with them through Zion Church.
Okay.
And they invited us to the couples group.
Okay.
Nice.
So what did y'all think about when y'all first came? Was that something that y'all were like, okay, what is this? Or like, oh yeah, we want to be down?
Well, I mean, as far as a couples group, with me being previously married, I was a part of a couples group prior. So I kind of knew that the significance of having a support system of other married couples, being able to not only have like intimacy and being vulnerable and transparent with these couples, but then also being able to understand that, you know, you are not the only one struggling with certain things. It's not just you or you guys. Mm-hmm. But what I will say is that I knew of you prior to coming to the couples.
You knew of me.
I knew of you.
My name was in them streets.
It was because you at one point were counseling one of our mutual friends.
Okay.
That I met through ministry. But it was actually myself, him, and Alan sitting in the car the first time that I heard your voice. And you were kind of
I recall that. I remember that conversation.
Some tough love.
Dog it.
Yeah, you were giving us some tough love.
That was one of the most frustrating conversations I've had. or I wasn't frustrating in terms of it was heartbreaking frustrating because of the conversation that I had to have and then what transpired after that. That pains me to this day. I get irritated when I think about it.
Yep.
We see.
And so
I know.
Right.
in my mind, coming into the couples group, when I actually met you and was able to put the face with the name and the voice, in my mind, I pictured you as being Suge.
Really?
From Death Row.
Wow.
Oh
Just-
my
just
God.
You got the whole beard situation going on.
It was
I
more
got-
so that it was the
Big
tough
guy.
love that you were giving him.
Okay.
Right? So you all had already developed a relationship, and so you had a certain relationship with him where you were
Yeah.
able to give him the advice that you were giving him. But I was coming in from that
Okay.
point.
Okay.
Mm.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
I was a little intimidated.
It was
coming
very
into the
valid.
couples
Really?
group,
Really?
though.
Why?
Because Sean and I's relationship, I always say, is like my most serious relationship.
Mm.
I would
And
hope so.
so I hadn't, well, yes, but I hadn't been in many serious relationships.
Yeah.
And so it was just a little bit intimidating thinking about, we're joining this group with couples,
Mm.
with married couples, and we were engaged but not married when we started with the group.
Oh.
Okay.
So it was a little bit intimidating, but as we continued to go through the group, it's like, oh, we need this. We need to be here.
Did you feel that we were thank you, Sean. Did you feel that we were, because I be doing that to Bernie all the
He
time.
does it to me all the time.
Did you feel that the group or the people in the group were like welcoming and
Absolutely.
making you feel comfortable?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And
Nice.
since everyone was transparent, it just made it easier to kind of relate and,
Okay.
and let the walls down.
You didn't
of
seem,
just
I didn't
trying
get a
to
sense of
be
like
okay.
nervousness that you had, but you're a very
She don't wear her-
bubbly and go with
She
the
don't
flow
wear-
type of person.
Yeah, I
And
am.
you don't? Do you not wear your feelings on your face either? Like what you thinking? Are you like stone faced a little?
I've made adjustments throughout the years to not do so.
Okay.
So I can, depending on the circumstance.
Right.
But I tend to be able to mesh well in many groups. so.
I saw you before I met you at church.
Okay.
I would see this tall woman running with natural hair, running around, busy, just always busy, and I would be there. And I would just see you just moving from in and out. Either you're going through the door in the lobby, going upstairs to the second floor. And I don't know, somebody mentioned you or something like that. It's like, I don't know who she is. I mean, they're like, that's who she is. I'm like, oh, okay. And then from that point on, I noticed you always moving. So
Always
you
busy.
both were busy at church. Now you're a minister at the church. Are you still a minister at the church?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir,
Okay.
I am.
Okay.
I'm still a minister. Just
sure?
celebrated 3 years.
You say sure.
well, I appreciate that because I had to confirm myself, and I
Okay.
just confirmed recently. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's actually my first impression of Tavia as well. Just what you said.
Y'all met at church?
Running around being busy. We actually met through the youth ministry.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Both
Mm.
being busy, running around.
Mm.
And our accountability couple, Randy and Alexis Pike.
Yeah.
Alexis actually was tasked with putting us together to host an overflow room for a backpack drive
Mm.
for the youth ministry. And so that's kind of like how we first interacted.
Nice.
Okay. We're gonna jump into that before we talk about that. Share with us like and so as I said in the beginning, we're gonna be talking about adjustments and the top adjustments that couples need to make and what adjustments you made. We do this because as a part of our we're extending the couples group that we already have into an online space. We really don't know what we're doing. We just trying to figure this stuff out as we go. We see people online doing it all the time. So we're going to do it too. Because we think that it's been helpful for a lot of
Yeah.
couples, and it allows us to expand our reach to help more people in different type of ways, in different situations, and specifically those people who are newly married,
Mhm.
because we know that's a very tricky, we call it tricky transitions. That's a very tricky transition that couples got to go through. So that's kind of this year what we will be focusing on. So a lot of the people that we're bringing on and the conversations we have are intended to share journeys and share stories and provide some guidance and input based upon our experience. And so that's kind of what we want to do here today, if that's okay with you all.
Absolutely.
Tricky transition.
Yeah. So what were when you were single, before you all were dating or courting or engaged, what was your single life like, career wise, relationship wise, socially wise?
Career wise, I just worked a lot. I started working for a news network, but I also was double dipping with another job that was remote and on the road. So
Okay.
I just managed my schedule so that I could work both of those jobs almost full time.
Wow.
And I'm an entrepreneur, so I worked on the weekends as well.
Wow.
So I just devoted my time to working often and enjoying my social life as well. I still had, plenty social single girlfriends, and so we would go out, go to dinner, spend hundreds of dollars on a meal and go
Wow.
shopping.
That
And
seems
it
to
was
be the
just
sound.
about what I wanted to do,
It
traveling.
was all about
and
you and
it's all
having
about
fun.
me, having fun and working and doing what I wanted with my money. So that was a lot of what my single life was like.
Okay.
Work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
You did
Enjoy
all
the
that. You
process.
sound real busy.
So you said you're an entrepreneur. Currently, you have what's the name of your business?
So I have two businesses. Elle Elise Artistry is
Say that slowly again.
Elle Elise Artistry.
Okay.
Is my hair and makeup business.
Okay.
And I'm also a doula with Labor and Legacy. So
Okay.
those are my two businesses.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Shout out to Elle Elise and the doula
Yes,
with Legacy.
Labor
and Legacy. Shout out to Elle Elise and doula with Labor and Legacy with Latavia. She up in the hair and in the womb. That sounds really weird. That sounds really weird.
You should have just slowed down.
Helping people
Oh.
feel good, helping
That
people
might-
feel
that
good
might
and look
stick.
good at different areas in their life.
There
So
you
whether
go.
they're trying to present themselves well because they're an entrepreneur or a business person or in the public eye,
Okay.
helping them present themselves the way they want to, and also doing the same thing on the doula side, helping women, face this, critical time in their life the way they ideal.
Okay.
In the
Yes,
head and in the
yes.
womb. I like that.
I don't know if that's
That-
gonna be
that
that's
sound-
not
that
gonna be what we
sound-
go with.
that sound-
but
that don't
I
sound-
feel y'all's creativity
Yeah,
flowing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you said business, social, and dating. So what
Right.
was your dating life like?
My dating life, it was just casually dating.
Did you have time?
For real.
It didn't sound like so much time.
I mean, I didn't have a lot, but at that time in my life, like right before Sean and I met, I wasn't thinking that I was, looking to be married. So
You
had
weren't
kinda-
looking to be married.
I
Okay.
kind of had gotten to a place in dating where I accepted that I may be single, I may not have children, and I was okay with that. And that God was going to use me in other areas, and it may not be to be a wife.
Wow.
Mm.
Did you come to that point and like, okay, I'm just going to be out here now and then go have fun and do all the things that you were doing? Or was that like something that you just realized from the beginning and you're just going to move forward? Like when did that hit? Were you like, oh, I'm waiting. Okay, it's not going to happen. I'm just going to be out here.
I guess it hit after I ended a 6-year on and off situationship.
Okay.
Mm.
So
that was your dating life before that? Kind of, sort of?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay.
It was someone that I was dating off and on for 6 years.
Okay.
And in the off times, I would go out, with other people, but always kind of circle back to this person. But I was getting tired of that and not really seeing better options out there. So I
Okay.
kind of resolved to, well, maybe this just is not for me.
I asked that because Bernie, that was one of the things that she said to me, like when I proposed to her, or that she kind of had just resolved that she just not going to
Yeah,
be
it's
married.
pretty
She's just
much
going to be
done.
single. I think she was 31 at the time, or 30 at the time, because we got
Mhm.
married. You got
I was
married
31
when
we got married. Yeah.
So she had just like, oh, well, I just not going to get
Yeah, I was
married.
done.
So I'm just going to be out here. And your boy rolled up and I was like, no, you're not. Come with me. So I wonder if that's if that's the resolution that women come to at a certain point in their life when they see all the situationships that don't work out to relationships, and they just like, you know what, it's whatever.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. And it's around that age.
Okay.
It's around that age because you're thinking, okay, if you are a woman who maybe desires to have a family,
Mhm.
the clock is real.
Yeah.
And
It
so
is
if
very
you
real.
haven't started at a certain point
Right.
building something with someone, it's kind of just like, maybe this won't be for me.
Okay.
And then if you come in, I think the moment I came into acceptance with that and some other things in my life, God was like, got something
Yeah.
else.
Interesting. I've heard people say like the moment that you give up your desires and give it over to God, that's when he and you
Shows
relinquish your control over it, that's
Mhm.
when he allows things to happen. I can't say that's what he be doing all the time because I've seen it otherwise.
Yeah.
But you know, it happened with y'all. So praise God.
Praise the Lord.
Sean.
Business wise. So a lot of what I'm going to say is tied around like responsibility and accountability. Just kind of as the structure. I've always had a certain level of responsibility and accountability throughout life. I've never really truly had like let down my hair instance where I've just been able to like, you know, throw money freely and travel and, you know, experience life in that sense. But had 3 jobs from 15 to 18, in addition to extracurricular activities.
We'll just call that. Yeah.
Went off to college, came back and got married at a young age, got married at 25. Had oldest is about to be 13. So had a child at a young age. And I'm not to say that it can't work, but for me, I can now acknowledge that I was too young. Right?
Okay.
And more so for me specifically was because I was trying to hold on to the past while reaching for the future in a lot of ways. And so I just had a lot of growing up to do in that sense.
Okay.
Got married.
Your college sweetheart? Did she go to college with you?
No.
Oh.
So we actually went to high school together.
Oh, I got you.
Went to high school together. I wouldn't necessarily say that we were high school sweethearts, but we had history from high school. But in essence, we both had a lot of growing to do, which I think that she would acknowledge as well on her end. We were both in a mutually toxic relationship, but still trying to figure out ourselves.
Yeah. At that age, yeah.
Absolutely. And it wasn't really until I was 30, you know, so we talking 5 years in, that I started like at 30, something changed in me where I was able to like truly not only accept myself and be comfortable within my own skin, but forgive myself for a lot of things and just mature in a lot of ways. And more so than anything, maturing in the sense of like loving myself and like, cause you know, you could easily say that you love yourself, but to be in love with yourself is a whole nother thing.
Okay.
And I fell in love with myself for the first time to the point where not only did I have a certain standard for myself and how I would be treated and how I would treat myself, but because of that, I also was able to treat others conducive.
That's interesting. Interesting.
So it took some time for me to get there. So that was kind of setting the landscape. But to get back right now I am almost 11 years at my job now. I'm a project manager in construction. Basically an owner's representative. So I oversee
before we talk about that, I wanted to stay in the lane of right before you were married.
Cool.
Before you were married to Latavia, like what single life was like at that point, like after the divorce.
It was scary. Okay. And the reason why is I've told Tavia this. I feel I am a good husband. I try my best to be a great husband.
You're a good husband.
I am a terrible boyfriend. Right?
Really?
Yeah. If I don't,
what the heck?
Because I'm still single. If I don't have a ring, I'm single. So I'm not good. And what I will say is the reason why I was scary is because I got married at a young age, and being in the DMV area, I never got to truly like experience single successful life as a Black man. So then being single, but having the experience that I had and being in the DMV area, and specifically in the DMV area, women are aggressive. Right. And so I fell into a lot of opportunities.
I like the way he put that.
I failed
opportunities.
I failed up.
You failed up. I see what you're saying.
Up into my relationship with my now wife. So
that was very well. I failed up. That was very well said, and that was you cleaned that up very well.
Yes, I learned from the best. Yeah.
So that was relationships, and at the time you were working, or did you have any side businesses or anything like that?
So I actually I was an entrepreneur myself. I still am an entrepreneur. Currently, I have Deeper Roots Enterprises, which I do consulting and services under that umbrella. However, previously I had a landscaping company but sustained an injury in 2016 because I was trying to do the work myself
Mhm.
and realized I had to work smarter and not harder,
Right,
which is
right.
why I'm consulting now.
I know that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually just came through that injury earlier this year
Wow.
from 2016.
Wow.
Mm.
So yeah.
And so the ministry route, did that start before you got married or afterwards?
Great question. So I actually did not come into my calling until I was going through my season of separation and divorce.
Okay.
That was like one of the worst, if not the worst, seasons in my life where, so for me, what I realized is that in, hearing God's voice for the first time clearly in him speaking to me, what he revealed to me was that everything that I had built up to that point, my career, being successful, making a good, decent income within my career,
Mhm.
having 2 beautiful kids, a boy and a girl, having, a home that I purchased at 23. I did the renovation, the demolition myself, and having a wife that I did all of that without one asking God along the way, is this to be my wife? Right. 2, just continually praying throughout the process and constantly praying to God and seeking his guidance.
Yeah.
And what he showed me was that everything that I had, he took away from me. And I had built all of that without him.
Okay.
And when I seek him intentionally, that I can get all of that back tenfold.
Okay.
And that my family
Job
can become whole
situation.
again. Yeah. So at my lowest, when all of that was taken from me, and I was living on my own in an apartment, I would like literally sleep in a fetal position like every night, right? And I started to hear God for the first time. And so in that, what he spoke to me was a revealing of my calling. This was around the time of me being 30 and coming into like what I expressed about my own realizations, and just like it was a real big growth period for me.
Okay.
And so I always felt like I had somewhat of an understanding of what my purpose was, but never really knew what that container, what that vehicle was going to be, what that calling was, that would drive that purpose to the destiny. And so in that time when I heard him speak to me, what he revealed was that I'm meant to be a pastor at some point.
Wow.
And so
Did you know that before today, Latavia?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Not
All right.
new info.
Go ahead.
and so in revealing that to me, what I then, as you get further away from something, you start to see more of a holistic picture because you can see it from a different perch.
Okay.
Right. And so what I realized is that had always been embedded in my life, and I had sprinkles of that realization throughout my life, whether I chose to run to it or run away from it.
I can see that. I can see how God creates. He gives you gifts without repentance, right? And then he allows you to live life. And then you bump your head. You have some kind of a Saul situation, and then he allows you to go through situations, and he causes enough turmoil, strife, bedlam, and chaos in your life to be like, okay, now my name is Paul. Now I'm gonna do your will. And like, okay, now then he sends you to Damascus for you to get yourself together, and then you okay, now I'm gonna be given a work to do.
Yeah.
And so he kind of makes you aware of that work later on after. But it was like what you was doing out in the streets, or what you was doing before you were doing his will. Yeah. Kind of had its roots, and kind of, so I can see that kind of path.
And I definitely was Saul. That turned into Paul. That's my avatar from the Bible.
So what would then you say when you were single was your like vision of your family or your new family? I'll go to you, Sean, and then Latavia.
So if you were to talk to Sean Jr. And ask him what his dad's desire was prior to marriage, what he would tell you is that my dad desired to travel the world and populate the earth.
What?
Populate the earth.
That was my goal.
Trying to have babies all over the world. That's what you're trying to do.
That was my goal. That was my goal. It was going to be. But see,
I don't understand.
But look, I'm gonna tie it in though. look, I'm gonna tie it in though, right? I'm gonna tie it in.
I mean,
because
I know that's what one of the commandments is. I mean, be fruitful and multiply.
tie it in.
But I think there's a process by which you do that now.
But look, I'm gonna tie it into what you were saying, because God gives you gifts and He gives you a purpose, right? Without repentance, right? And so that was the will portion that was tied to the purpose and the good heart posture and the positive intent. Because what I wanted to do was potentially join the Peace Corps, right? Or do something where I'm able to travel and I'm able to put sustainable systems, build sustainable systems for countries, right? Whether it be water infiltration systems, bringing electricity to different countries.
How does that relate to you populating the earth, though?
Hear me out.
Okay, all right, all right, okay.
So that was my ultimate goal and like career goal.
Okay,
right. However, the fleshly side of me wanted to be able to check off a few other boxes along the way, right? And
interesting.
So imagine if I were to go that way, and the good that I could potentially do, but the great that I could have accomplished if I also did not feed the fleshly side of me.
Okay.
Right. And so I'm glad that I'm where I am. And obviously that was not the way that I was supposed to go.
That was the Saul route.
It's the dichotomy of every human being. Right.
Yeah.
You have that double-edged sword. Right. Yeah. I was definitely Saul.
Okay.
I led with flesh.
Was that after the divorce or before the?
No, that was before the divorce.
Okay. What about afterwards?
After the divorce, I came into my calling, and so
okay. So what was your vision of like what family would look like from that point forward?
I had no idea, but the promise that I heard from God was that my family would be whole again.
Okay.
Right? And so coming through a divorce, you ask, how is that possible? Are we meant to get back together? Or right? But what I'm able to now see is that when we got together, I would probably say maybe 6 months into her being introduced to the two oldest, our daughter, the 10-year-old, immediately started calling her mama, right? So that was a connection that showed me that it is possible for our family to be whole again, because the kids took to her in such a strong way.
It was probably good that when you said you had no idea, because usually if you have an idea, you start trying to make things happen and maneuver and be doing your own plans.
Especially me.
Yeah, it was probably good that you just left that blank.
Yeah. And Latavia, what about you? What was your vision of family? I know that you had reached a point where you're like, well, I must not be getting married, so I'm just gonna be out here in these streets. Figuratively speaking.
He mean with $100 dinner plates with your girlfriend.
Right.
I know it don't sound right. I know
it can sound real.
Right. He was out here in these restaurants. There you go.
With $100 plates.
Right. Yeah. And so forth.
Restaurants, but okay. I give it to you.
What was your envision of family at that point in time in your life?
I don't think I started to envision family until I met the kids with Sean.
Oh.
Because it kind of just, like I said, it kind of wasn't in my plans, my personal plans, that was going to be a part of my life. And so I really didn't think about what my family dynamic would look like.
Okay.
And if I would have chosen, and I know God puts people in your life for a reason and season, but that situationship, that guy also had a daughter. And so in my mind, I was thinking, I'm not dating anybody else with a daughter, because in the time frame that we're dating, I also got attached to his child. For us to not have worked out, I didn't want to put myself or the child in the situation, or build up this false reality that we were supposed to work because the kid took to me.
Right.
And so I was kind of protective of myself with that space, but was open because I had obviously done that before, dating someone with kids before. So I didn't know exactly what it could potentially look like until we were together. Like, it wasn't revealed to me.
So did you have any desires or plans to have a family of your own children and anything like that? Or was that just if it happens, it happens?
I was open, and if that was going to be a part of my life, that I would. I always wanted to be a mother.
Okay.
I didn't necessarily have the desire to be a wife because of the things that I saw in my upbringing in my childhood.
Yeah.
And so I knew I wanted to have children. I didn't know how those children were going to come to be, but I also knew that, I wanted to have a biological parent involved, not necessarily doing surrogacy or, alternative methods of,
was
getting
doula
pregnant.
was being a doula something that you wanted to do at that stage, or did that come afterwards?
I was always interested in childbirth and almost went to school to be an obstetrician.
Oh, wow.
But realized that I wasn't a great student and that it wasn't, like you could be in school for a long time.
I'm going to cut that part out because you don't want somebody to know.
That's self-awareness.
It's like, you know what? This is just probably not going to be my lane. And so I didn't know how I could still be involved in doing birth work until I was pregnant myself and was looking for, a doula and support to have, a birthing experience that was memorable and not scary.
Okay. So you got a doula when you were pregnant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities of how I could still be involved in birth work.
That's interesting when you think about, wow, when you kind of had given up on the notion or didn't have any plans for like yourself being married or having a family. Then when you gave that up, you met Sean, y'all got married, and then you got pregnant, and then your experience with a doula then birthed inside of you a reignition of the desire that you had to be involved in childbirth, which gave you the exposure, and then now you're doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
cool.
There's a whole lot of questions I want to ask about that because there's a whole spiritual dive that's in there that hopefully we'll get to. But that's heavy. That's really heavy.
Yeah.
I don't think you understand how heavy that is.
And the experience that we had, my first pregnancy resulted in miscarriage, and it resulted in a very traumatic way. And so just even just seeing that, just not even knowing the possibilities of what I experienced, and then coming into a space of like answering a call to help other women have better, pregnancies and birth experiences. It all just kind of came full circle from my experiences.
So when you
personal experience.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very deep. I'm not even saying it figuratively because there's a lot of depth in there that hopefully you get the chance to explore. When you all met briefly, talk about y'all love story. Like, you saw him standing on the stage preaching a sermon, and he was like, he's a handsome dude.
Well, the first time I actually saw Sean was during the I Serve. So we all had the ministry was new, and everyone had to go to I Serve to just have their background and introduction into ministry. And so he was there, and I invited him to an activity that the youth ministry was doing, and he was busy. He kind of shot me down. So that was my first shooting of my shot that he shot down.
Oh, so you shot shots?
Wait.
I shot shots.
You was a sniper
more than
out
one
here.
Shot.
You was a sniper out here.
I invited him to an activity that everybody, it wasn't just like a one-on-one thing.
Okay.
It was like a group activity with the youth ministry. And
this was
he wasn't available.
Yeah. Okay.
With Oscar, he wasn't available. He had some family things to attend to. And then
so you had known about him. You said that you had seen him before, and you all were in the same you went to like a church meeting or something like that, right?
But our first like real interaction was when we did the backpack drive.
Yeah.
So that was like our first interaction to kind of see each other, how each other moved.
Now, Sean, did you recognize her? Or was she just another young lady that was in the backpack drive that was?
Well, no, I recognized her similar to what you were saying, and just knowing that she was busy, always moving around. I didn't really notice her and see her, quote unquote, until the backpack drive. So I was familiar with who she was and the ministry that she worked with prior, but never really paid too much attention. Also, I was in my season of singleness I was in a relationship.
Trying to populate the earth.
I was in a relationship.
Okay.
I was in a relationship and was trying to be a mature, responsible adult. And so when Tavia was shooting her shot, I had to respectfully decline because of the relationship that I was in.
Very good.
Yes, the second time I shot my shot.
Okay, the second time.
He then let me know that he was in a relationship.
Oh,
okay.
And I was inviting him to another group activity. It wasn't like
you
we
know
were
what?
just doing
I
one-on-one
applaud
things.
you for the shot shooting
Yeah.
because it is a it is agency and ownership of what it is that you are pursuing in your life for what it is that you want. And I don't have no qualms with women shooting shots.
Yeah, I respect it.
And also I've heard, advice from other men that, men are just as unsure of your,
True.
interests as well as women feel that they're unsure if a man is interested in them. So what I've been told is that if you are interested in a man, to just let him know that and be upfront about it so that he knows how to move.
Especially
and so I did that.
I don't necessarily know if I've never been diagnosed, but I don't really think that I pick up on like social cues well. So I need you to tell me something directly. Like I can't, the body language and the, unless it's over the top.
True.
And then I have to ask questions to then gain clarification. But I need direct.
So did you take the route of, I want to let you know I'm interested? Or did you take the route of, let me flirt with you and hope that you get the clues?
I was dropping breadcrumbs.
Okay.
To then present.
So you were like, okay, to then present the meal.
Mm-hmm.
What you mean? What you mean? Clarify.
I was dropping hints.
Okay.
To then be able to be more forward because it wasn't me inviting him to these group activities. Could have just been me inviting him to these group activities, but they were opportunities for me to have more conversation and get to know.
Right. That's the very core, like, oh, come to this ministry meeting, blah, blah, blah. But that's not really, if you're like, oh, okay, she invited me to a ministry meeting, but it's like, I didn't know that you was trying to holler. Was it that vague, or did you be like, look, so-and-so,
no,
I don't know.
I never like threw it out there.
Okay.
Until maybe like the third time.
It was vague enough where she could have backslid out of that situation to save face. Yeah.
I love that. I was reading this real quick story. I was watching this video and I was doing a lot of research on innuendo and the notion of innuendo, what an innuendo is. An innuendo is something that you present to somebody that it speaks to an activity or a proposition that you're propositioning someone that does not equate to what your status is.
Yep.
So like if you're dating, if you want somebody to ask you out, but you're not in a status where like, okay, it's okay for me to say, I want you to ask me out. You drop an innuendo. Yep. Like, oh, that's not a nice restaurant. I'd like to go there sometime. Innuendo. That's innuendo. It doesn't mean I want you to take me, but it does mean I want you to take me. And if you say, I'm not going out with you, be like, I'm not asking you to go out with me. You have a way to back out of that joint.
That's what Tavia was doing. She was innuendoing me.
Yes. And that's good.
And I'm glad that you said that because now, even today, she's an innuendoer. So I appreciate
and he also doesn't pick up on social cues. That's what he just said.
I don't.
He said he needed direct.
I don't.
Yeah.
Even now,
That's
I don't.
what she said. Yeah. Wow. That's interesting.
But I mean, it was me figuring out how could I potentially like date or even present the idea of I'm interested in someone in church. That's the different, when I was
tricky
single,
too, yeah.
I would meet people out at the club or at a lounge,
at a
happy
restaurant.
Hour.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
A different environment.
Right.
Than you going into church. It's like, how do I now present myself if I'm interested in someone in an appropriate way?
Don't nobody teach that.
No.
Nobody teaches that.
Nobody teaches it. It's not fair.
So you invite them to the ministry meeting and see what happens.
Jenkins did that, remember?
That's what I was going to tell that story.
Go ahead. You know it better than me.
We were told that
just in case they see this, we were told.
allegedly, Pastor Jenkins, First Baptist Church, Glen Arden.
What's her name?
Trina Jenkins, his wife, was. I want to tell the story like it was told to me. She was interested in Pastor Jenkins, and so someone told her to. No, she told him. I'm not gonna say who told her because I don't know the details. But she told him we're gonna have a prayer meeting, a Bible study at my house. I'm inviting you to come. And so he came and wasn't nobody else invited.
I've been there.
In the story about Boaz, and people always talk about Boaz. I want to find my Boaz. Well, what you need to find is your Naomi, because Naomi was the one who told Ruth to go down there and sleep at that man's feet in the bed. Mm-hmm. And when he wake up, just do what he says. And then that was what Boaz was like, oh, you're a woman of high quality. Let me sneak you home and get home because people are going to talk about you and blah, blah, blah. And then that's what made Boaz attracted to Ruth. What Naomi told her to do. And when Ruth got home, Naomi was like, what happened? So right. So you need to find yourself a Naomi to tell you what to do.
Yeah, we need a yellow pages of Naomi right there.
Yeah.
For every guy out here.
Because I very firmly believe that, especially nowadays, in the millennial generation, more so than my generation and generation after y'all, is the women have taken on I'm not going to shoot my shot, which is why shooting your shot became such a big thing when women started doing it. Like, I'm not going to shoot my shot. I'm going to just let a man be a man, and he's going to have to choose me. I was like, y'all wasting y'all time. Because
it's not the same.
The economy of relationships has changed. There's so many available women and not that many available men that they can just sit back and bequeath unto them all ye who are weary and heavy laden, and they will come and give him rest. Just some rest.
No, but that's an amazing point though, because especially when you are desiring and moving towards being a good man,
right,
actually has something going for yourself.
Yeah.
What you find is a lot of innuendoers within, especially even within the church.
Right. Especially in the church.
Yeah.
And so you need someone that is going to cut through that white noise, I would say, to get to an actual opportunity for a relationship.
And that's what I was telling a lot of the young adults who were single at the time. Y'all need to, if you're interested, you need to shoot your shot. I don't think that we were using that word at that point, but you need to, do something. They were like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm like, okay. But we were talking about y'all's story and how y'all met and all that stuff. So go ahead and finish.
Yep.
Oh, I think maybe the third time I shot my shot, it was just like a random day, and he actually called. Like, we had exchanged phone numbers.
So you were still shooting your shot, even though he said he was in a relationship?
I mean, after that one time, I said, okay, he's in a relationship. I'm done shooting my shot. Like, I never reached out to him. I never spoke to him really. It was casual. Hey, how you doing?
But throughout that whole time, we were working together within the youth ministry. So we still had a relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was from
we were familiar with
standpoint.
each other. We had, worked on projects and things like that together through youth ministry, but never like on a one-on-one basis. Let's kind of get to know each other. He called me one day and we talked on the phone for a while, and it was very lighthearted conversation. So I didn't feel a way about it. Like, oh, this man has a girlfriend, but we're on the phone, but we talked for a while. And he was preparing to go to the movies. He said he was going to take himself to the movies, and this was the final shot.
Yeah.
Is that an innuendo?
It was an innuendo. It was innuendo.
I said to him, well, if you didn't have a girlfriend or if you weren't in a relationship, then I would invite myself to the movies with you.
There we go. See, there it is.
And he said, well, I'm not in a relationship. And I said,
where we going?
That's right.
Tavia, come on, girl. That's how you do it. That's what I'm talking about right there. What time the movie is.
And so that's how we started, dating and seeing each other.
Wow.
Yep.
And then y'all dated for how long before y'all got engaged?
That
said it was quick, right?
Like engaged
11
maybe,
months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good time.
Yeah. And I want to say we were dating prior to you meeting the kids. I want to say maybe like 6 months into us actually dating.
Yeah. Maybe around 6 months.
That was when she was introduced to the kids. And the beautiful thing with that was they had already known, they already knew who she was through the youth ministry.
Okay.
Right? Because anybody that knows me know that I'm going everywhere with my kids. Right? So they knew everybody within the ministry. But they were already asking prior to us going out together as all four, when can we go out with Miss Latavia? Like, when are we going to hang out outside of church with Miss Latavia? So that was like God tapping me on the shoulder and giving me a little bit of direction and clarity.
Nice. And then y'all were engaged for how long before you got married?
But another maybe 6 years? I mean 6 months,
6
7
years.
months.
Good God.
No. 6
months.
That's a decent time.
6 months.
That's a decent time.
Yeah. But going into our relationship, we were already talking intentional dating. I made sure to, at a bare minimum, I wanted to express what my expectations were for where we were moving because I didn't want to play around anymore. I was scared of being outside by myself, in that single
for
world.
the streets.
Yeah. But then also I'd heard from God that not only was my family to be whole, but what he told me as well was that he had a job for me to fulfill and that I was not meant to do that alone.
Had he revealed that job to you at that point?
No. And I'm honestly, transparently, I still don't know what that job is, but I'm on the path.
Yeah. I would not think that he would reveal it to you yet.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things that God typically, God do what he want to do, but typically what he does is he allows couples to go through a lot of trials and tribulations so he can, we talked about this in the other podcast, First Peter 1:6-7 talks about he will test the authenticity or the genuineness of your faith. Because before he can give over to you his prized possessions, his spiritual wisdom and his great insight, because he tests everybody that even Jesus got tested before he's allowed to serve and operate in his gifts that he was ultimately going to be operating in. He has to test you to make sure that y'all are straight. And what he does with you individually, he tests you, and then as a couple, he tests you because he's going to weaponize you against the devil. But he has to know, can I trust you with the heavenly resources I'm about to give you, and make sure that y'all don't use it for your own aggrandizement or to weaponize it against his people.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of why he puts you through turmoil and stress and stuff. But we'll jump into that. Matter of fact, that's a good segue. That's why he allows the stress and the turmoil and the situations that happen in marriage to exist, because that is his proving ground. That's his testing ground to be like, okay, we're trying to identify some things in your relationship that you need to adjust. And so that adjustment period is real. So we're going to jump into the first one, which is balancing. So balancing, the way that I have identified balancing based upon our research that we've done is, and this is also research back when I was doing for my book, His Leadership or Trust. Whenever there is an issue that something is trying to take away something from you or make you do something, it becomes a problem when that issue is perceived by one to affect your security, your well-being, or your happiness, your security, well-being, of your happiness. So sometimes an issue does not become a problem because, let's say, you feel like your spouse is asking you to cook more. I'll just say that. And if you feel like, oh, I'm having to spend more time cooking, you'd be like, well, I've kind of wanted to do that anyway, or I feel like that's my role. So I don't mind cooking more. If that's what my spouse wants, I don't mind doing that. So it's not a problem, but it is an issue because it takes up more time now. So if you do not want to cook more, or if that's not what you feel like you should be doing, now it's a problem because the demand is taking away something from you that you feel like, I need to spend this time doing something else, or I don't want to do that. You should do it. And so that's when it becomes a problem. And so what happens next is conflict arises when you try to balance the equation of that, when you're trying to balance how much time you're spending cooking or versus doing something else. So that is kind of my definition of balancing. And so some examples of that are like if you're trying to balance work life versus your personal life. Like, how much do you give toward one toward the other? If you're balancing the amount of individuality you have versus the amount of partnership that you need to create in the new marriage. When you need for personal space versus maintaining a connection. If you have a need, this is a good one. When you have the need to give grace versus holding someone accountable for something. Like those are balances. Those are just some of the balancing arenas, just to give you an example. So the question, you all right, Latavia?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm like, those are all great examples and things that we, are experiencing. That's real for us.
So what adjustments have you had to make regarding balancing opposing sides of an issue in your marriage? And I want each of you all to, come up with your own.
I would say.
Before you start, if this conversation is very interesting for you all, please like and subscribe and put some comments in there. Like, what are some of the areas that you've had to balance in your relationship? And back to you.
I guess for me, I would say the individuality was a big one because I didn't come into the relationship with children. The way I lived my life prior to our relationship was all about me. I'm also the baby of my family. And so, because of all of those things, I have had to try and balance what it meant for me to be a wife and a mom and be present in that space, but still have things that are me, that are solely me. So I look at those things as like my business is something that allows me to have still a sense of individuality. And that's kind of where I've focused my individuality and like really had us to have strong conversations about, no, I don't want your help with this because it's me.
Okay.
And this is just what I'm doing. And I don't want collaboration necessarily in this area. Because my collaboration, my family life is the collaboration.
Yeah.
In everything that we're doing together with each other or, with the kids. So that's been a big thing for me to kind of have to try and find some balance is what is appropriate individual time.
Okay.
And what's appropriate individual decision making as well. And then what do I need to also bring into the fold of, I have a partner here that's with me that needs and seeks collaboration. And that is what we are in this marriage to do, is to pursue goals together. And so how do I, what kind of do I compartmentalize as what is me individually? That's something socially, like I'm a social individual. And I'm still trying to find balance in that area.
Okay.
But, just those individual interests, what do I still do to fuel myself? And then what things do I need to also, bring into the fold of my family and my partner?
You said a whole lot.
He did. I got
lot.
a quick question. You said appropriate decision making. Is that only in your businesses or just in everything?
It's in everything. Like the decisions that we make as a family, decisions that we make, for events and with our time. It's still an area where I'm improving on every day, because sometimes I may think, I just need to, move forward with this. And I forget that I need to have a conversation, and then it could create a problem or it could create an issue.
Yeah.
So it's still an area where, finding that balance where, this is solely something that you can make a decision on yourself. Like, what's the price that you're going to charge for a makeup service? But I can't decide that I'm going to go do that makeup gig without having a conversation first with my husband to see, does that fit into our schedule for the day? Will I have proper childcare? For the family, what does that look like? For my time away from the house doing those individual things, it can still affect, the family.
Did the individuality, and there's so many more questions I want to ask, but just before I jump into the questions I want to ask, did the individuality that you were trying to balance, how did that come into play when you started having children? Because y'all been married 3 years and you have 2 kids.
Yeah.
Y'all busy. so like how did the individuality, or maybe there was something other thing that you try to balance when it comes to having kids, and then being mom, being business owner, being employee, being wife, and being.
They have 4 kids.
What'd I say?
2.
I mean, she
it's
had
a-
you
it's a
had
blended
you birthed
family.
2 kids,
Yes.
right? And
But the
so
other one's calling her mom.
I know I
And
know
they
that.
are my babies
See,
too.
exactly. They got
but
4.
I wasn't saying it
Yeah.
like they're not.
I know.
I was
I'm
saying
just saying.
Now
No, but
that I
after-
have
after-
biological
because there's a
children.
after
significant difference.
in 3 years you birthed 2 children.
I get
Which
what you're
is
saying.
which the load is a lot heavier because you said y'all's oldest is
12 and
13,
10.
About to be
12 and 10.
13.
Yeah, about 12 and 10.
wow.
So the
Oh, so much.
the lift is different.
Yeah.
But a
That's
newborn, 2 newborns in like
yeah.
3 years,
That's
that's
a
what I
lot.
was speaking to. So
That is
and
a
there's
lot.
there's a level of individuality since you mentioned that you had prior to, like, so I guess my question was, is that how did that come into play, the balancing of individuality with new moms?
I think
To
I
newborns.
have learned the harder lessons once becoming a biological parent than before. Because, you know, if you're breastfeeding, that's your body is not your own
Mhm.
still, even after you have the baby. So that individual part of me where I can move and do what I want, I can't necessarily do that because, you know, that's just one of the things I have to keep my mind on. When does the baby need to eat? What do I need to eat so that my body is producing what the baby needs to be? So there's a lot of decisions that are
Yeah.
like, I can't make an individual decision on a lot of things, but that started to develop more intensely when becoming a biological mom.
What was the issue? Well, you talked about the issues, but how did it become a problem?
Or do you see it as a problem?
The problem with me being able to balance individuality.
Mhm.
I don't
That's a
necessarily
good question. Like,
see
did you
it-
see it as a problem? Because it may have just been an issue you had to deal with and not necessarily a problem.
Yeah, I think it was just an issue I had to deal with, an adjustment that had to be made. I don't necessarily see it as a problem because I see that my role in their lives is a blessing.
Yeah.
And so I
Mhm.
can never look at that as a problem
Okay.
because it's
Right.
also a choice that we made,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know, to
Right.
have them. So it's not a problem, it's just adjustments
Mhm.
to be mindful of.
And so I respect everything that you just said, and I appreciate that. The reason why I wanted to throw in that nuance is because I think that it is important to discuss both sides of it, right? The husband and the wife, because I definitely see it as a problem.
I
And
was
the
going
reason
to
why-
swing it your way to see
Yeah.
if what she experienced as an issue, did you experience that as a problem?
Absolutely.
Okay. Speak
Yes,
on it.
absolutely.
What was the problem?
Well, so the reason why I see it as a problem is because, again, I was previously married, right? And so one, in that I have a certain level of experience. However, I'm able to say that now I can understand that all credits that you've obtained from previous classes are
Yeah.
not necessarily transferable.
Transferable.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I can see though is that because, again, with what you were saying about the 2 versus the 4, her actually having 2 biological children, she's now experiencing body change, identity change, certain realizations. But the problem comes in me being able to already have the understanding and the foresight that those things are happening. But because she's going through it and she still has area for improvement as it pertains to communication, she's not communicating those things, right? And so that's the problem. Like,
Mm.
kind of like where Tavia would say, like, I'm gonna keep my head down. This is just something that I have to deal with.
Mhm.
But where is the relational, marital aspect of the time that it takes for you to then focus on not only yourself, which you have every right to, but now you focusing on the kids. Now, you know what I mean? And so, like, where in that pie, what slice is for our marriage, right?
When you say what slice of the pie is for that marriage, you talking about the amount of time that she spends. I'm not
intentionally for our marriage.
Okay. How much time is being spent on? You got mom, you got work, you got all these other things. But what about our marriage? What about like us? And so the problem was, just so I make sure I'm tracking with you, the problem was that you did not feel that there was enough time spent on like quality time for y'all.
No, because I can provide a certain level of grace, right? Especially because I have a certain level of experience to know we are going to go through these things as we have babies that are completely dependent on us, right? The problem comes in when the communication stops. And now I don't have a window to be able to see into what you're going through
Okay.
and potentially help you as a partner.
Okay.
Right. To me, that is the where the problem lies, is when you are on the ship or on your own, silo, dealing with your own issues, and you don't let me in to be able to help.
Okay.
Right. So
interesting. Is that something that you all figured out what the solution was for? Like, what was the balance?
No, this is real time.
Or is it still? It's still.
This is real time.
It's 5-month-old baby,
right.
so they in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that we currently deal with.
Okay.
A lot of the times I'm like, I'm not gonna complain about this. I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna do what I have to do. That's just been a mindset of mine for as long as I can remember, from being a little kid.
Okay.
It's just like, why are you complaining? You are blessed in so many areas of your life. This is a responsibility that you have, or obligation, or whatever it is. You just do what you got to do. And it's not necessarily that you don't have any feelings around it, but like, what is sharing it going to do? So it's a mindset shift of I'm experiencing life with my husband.
Yeah.
And he wants to know. And a lot of men don't want to know.
True.
Or care to hear about all of the things that you're experiencing. So I have to see the blessing that I have in that, and continue to open myself up to sharing.
Well, if I could add to that though, because I do want to know.
Let me ask this question, because I want to gain a little bit more clarity or insight. What is your default mode for sharing or not sharing feelings like that you have about what you're going through? Because you said that it's like, what's the point of sharing? It's not going to change anything. I just got to deal with it. Like, where is that feeling coming from? You said you've been like that ever since you were a kid.
I mean, I grew up with a single mom. I just saw her do what she had to do. I understood that she was experiencing a lot.
Right.
I understood that, money was tight. I understood a lot of different things that she was experiencing, even though she wasn't having in-depth conversations with me about it. I was observant and intuitive to what was going on around me. So, some of that, I mean, I guess all of that comes from, that upbringing of, you're going to go through a lot of things in this life, but you have everything that you need, and you can make it work with what's here in front of you.
So is your silence, or non-communication a coping mechanism for dealing with just life? Or is it a resolve that, or is it the individuality of something that you're owning, like, no, this is my responsibility, so I'm going to deal with it?
It's both and.
Okay.
It's both and. Like, I do take on, most of the domestic activities in the house. That's what I feel like I should do.
Oh my gosh.
Cleaning the kitchen is one domestic activity. There are many things that happen in the house.
There's many things.
There are many things.
But we ain't gotta do. Let's stay on the topic.
But
let's stay on the topic.
Most of the things.
Okay.
And I will include, taking care of the kids and doing things like that are a lot of, what the responsibilities will fall on me. And so I'm not going to complain about that. I'm not going to, huff and puff through the going throughs, because it's not going to change the situation. What I can change is my attitude and my posture around it, and how I present it out, to other people.
What's your attitude about it? I mean, it sounds like you are very cognizant and cogent about it being a responsibility you have, and it's yours, and you just deal with it.
And is
there some resentment that you have to do that, period?
No, there's no resentment. There's no
So
resentment.
what is the attitude about it? It sounds like you're okay with doing it. With that being your responsibility.
But I would also be okay with floating a housekeeper, $300 or $500 a month to do some of those things, so that I can sit on my computer and do stuff for my business.
Okay.
So that's
the balance.
That's the balance.
That's the balance.
I know where we are as a family financially, what our goals are. And, sometimes we're not going to be able to hire out for all the things that we may want
Okay,
to do.
I'm
The
seeing it.
balance is you take on responsibility for the things you do, and you devote time to what you can when you can.
And that's a real balance. Do I clean the kitchen, or do I work on my business and hire somebody to clean the kitchen? And if money's not looking like you can do both, it's like, okay, well, I got to clean the kitchen this week or this month or today, or I'm just gonna have to do this work slower than not. That's a lot. Go ahead, Sean. I interrupted you because there's a comment I want to have about that.
I don't remember what I was going to say about that, but what would you like me to address?
Oh, I stopped you from talking because you were going to respond to that.
I forgot. There was quite a few things I wanted to say as Tavia was speaking. But yeah, I respect what you are saying, babe, and I do appreciate you. I do appreciate you. I will say that I think that we could stand to benefit from truly identifying roles and responsibilities with more delineation. But I think that a lot of things we could benefit from setting and forgetting, right? Establishing those things, so then that way we could focus on more time to pour into each other, to enjoy each other, so on and so forth, as opposed to going throughout the week and, as an example, maybe having some dissension in the belief of the division of responsibility, right? Because I fold, I wash, I sort clothes just as much as she does, right? She takes care of the babies more than I do, but I take care of the two oldest more than she does. I'm an integral part in the day-to-day specifically for the two oldest all the time, right? And so I don't know if there is too much of a difference between the roles and responsibilities that we hold within our household. Besides the fact that Tavia does the majority of the cooking, I expressed out the gate that I don't necessarily like to cook. Even though I can cook, I don't enjoy it, right? And I also clean as I cook, so it takes a long time. But I'm the one that cleans the kitchen all the time behind her and the kids.
That's because he don't want nobody else to do it. Nobody else does it the way he wants it.
Hey, you better let him own that. You better let him own that.
I'll leave it there.
I think the balancing that I'm hearing is very real, and it's not uncommon for where you all are in your marriage, because it's actually a standard what every couple has to figure out.
Yeah.
And so it's the balancing of like, how much time do we spend doing the work ourselves versus hiring it out, and then like what work is done. I think by this stage in y'all's marriage, roles and responsibilities, I figured they would be figured out by now. But I'm hearing that they're figured out, but there's still, as to use Sean's word, some dissension on whose roles are what.
Well, I think that it's kind of been alluded to through the conversation. It's more of an attitude of putting your head down and just doing the work.
Yeah.
Versus the communication that we may benefit from in being able to have more of an understanding and maybe even more appreciation for what both of us how both of us contribute, because we both are workhorses, right? So we're going to keep our head down. We're going to do what needs to be done. And then at the end of the day, we're going to wake up and we're going to start all over again.
But that's the thing. Because you coined it very well. Both of you are workhorses, because as I saw, I bet you was running around the church doing stuff. And so you have a very strong work ethic, and so do you. But your work are different. And is there appreciation for the differences that you both do? I'll go to you, Latavia.
I would say not enough.
Okay. Well, we can start there. Understanding that the objectives that you all are trying to strive for have different roles and responsibilities. And I'm alluding to the leadership topic, but the whole essence of leadership, the crux behind leadership, is that there are two or more people. Well, I'll say it this way: leadership cannot exist if you don't have these three things: two or more people, a common goal, and different roles and responsibilities. And so you have to have those things in order for leadership to exist. And so if you have that, then leadership can exist. It's just a matter of who's going to be leading and then what the responsibility is. And so effective organizations identify what those different differentiations are, and then they lean into that. And you could put your head down into the things that you're good at, and you can put your head down in things that you're good at. And it's just a matter of accepting, okay, this is what we're good at. This is what you're going to be good at. In order for us to do this, we're going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And y'all good? Okay. We dap each other up later on tonight.
But it sounds like, were you saying that you all just put your heads down and just everybody just does what they're supposed to do, but there really hasn't been any conversation or delineation, I don't know how to say that word, on who's going to be doing what?
Yeah, it's so yes. But to tie it into what you were saying, it's kind of like if you think about work, you typically are going to have a staff meeting, right? Within that staff meeting, you're going to do a debrief and understand where you are and where you need to go. We could stand to do that a lot more often. So then that way we're not continuing to just trudge forward with what needs to be done without acknowledgement, because the communication that is lacking is where that then stands. That's where that lies, is the opportunity to acknowledge and appreciate through communication, right? Especially when you tie in two babies that are completely dependent.
Yeah.
And I might be looking for my baby to give me some love, but her mind is always on work as it pertains to the children.
Right. That's true. And as a new mom, that's something that's a balancing act right there. Trying to figure out like, okay, how much time do I give to these little babies, to myself, and to my husband, to the roles and responsibilities of the house, and I'm tired. And I got to go to work, and I got to pick up kids from mom's house.
Yeah.
That's just a lot. It's just a lot. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, welcome to
adulting.
Adulting.
Welcome to adulting.
But I was gonna say, and I don't know if you all do this, but Bernie and I, we had a recent business meeting where we went over the finances, because at the beginning of the year we have a new pay increase. So it's like, okay, got the new pay increase. What are we gonna do with that money? And Bernie and I was like, Bernie, we need to have a meeting about this money. It's like, oh, you just can't just do so and so. I was like, no, we need to sit down and talk about it. So when we were sitting down talking about it, it was a little terse, a little bit, because I wanted to go through our whole budget again and revamp the whole thing. And she was like, can't we just?
No, I didn't mind going through the whole, it's just the way your mind operates. Mine don't operate that way. So he was trying to make me get on Excel and do this. I can't, he needs to do the Excel.
Yeah.
Excel.
He could do the Excel, but just tell me. And see, I just took notes on what we're actually doing. But, I let him do the Excel part.
So I got irritated because she was irritated that we needed to have this conversation. So I was like, stop besmirching the way that we discuss what it is that we're doing in front of finances. I said, for the whole of our marriage, we've done it this way. And even though it's irritating, it's worked.
And it's important.
And it's important. And the places where we have been able to the things that we've been able to do and accomplish have all been set up by these meetings at the beginning of the year so that we can do them throughout the year. Yeah. So stop fussing at me about having to do them. She wasn't fussing at me.
I wasn't fussing. I just didn't want to do it.
I felt an internal fuss that was not voiced.
It was the whole Excel thing.
It was by the heavy breathing and the sighs.
Because it was the Excel. It was the Excel. I know.
All that. And so I was like, oh gosh. She was like, can't we just, I'm like, no, we got to do this. So
it wasn't that I did not want to have the meeting and do it. It was the way you were trying to make me do the meeting.
Which is having the meeting.
No, it was Excel.
What I'm getting from what you're saying is you had a little bit of anxiety around having to lean in what you've acknowledged as maybe a weakness, right? Like the Excel is that's not your strength. So the fact that
it's his, but he wanted me to get on Excel. So the fact that you were
tasked with trying to work that, it maybe you do better with writing it on paper.
Well, no, it wasn't on paper. It was on notes in my phone. Just the end result. Like, this is what we're doing. We couldn't put this here, and I had notes. But to try to put the charts and Excel and this, and then my mind don't work the way you was doing the Excel thing. I don't
anyway, the point I'm making is we had that meeting. It was a necessary meeting. We had it one time. And so that gave us the direction that we needed. So embrace the suck of the meeting and be like, okay, we're going to do this once. We're going to set it up and then we're going to forget it. Because that's something that you just mentioned. You set up the meeting and we're going to forget it. But let's make sure we go through all of the steps. And the person who's good at leading those type of meetings It's just gonna be a day that you be like, okay, well, all right, it's gonna be one of them days. But then be thorough about it, so you don't have to revisit it until 2025.
To that point, we actually had our first annual family retreat with both of us, where we sat down at the end of 2023. However, I do think and find value in, and I actually was thinking about this maybe like a week ago, so we might be in alignment. I haven't shared this with you yet, but I do think that it would be beneficial for us to maybe have quarterly check-ins. And so the quarterly check-in won't necessarily be as strenuous as that annual meeting, but it'll allow us to be able to like quantify the milestones and the achievements and kind of just check in along the way.
If you do that, set a time frame for the meeting and set a agenda.
Yep.
So that it doesn't go off the rails.
Yep.
It doesn't turn into like an annual meeting.
Yep.
Because then that would tax the next quarterly meeting and be like, the baby. I got the baby. I gotta feed the baby. You know, because she will pull that on you quick. But I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. But one thing that I did want to discuss about before we transition from the balance part.
But we never got your balance.
Okay. Yep. So,
but talked about your balance after that comment you want to make.
Well, no, I mean, this is we on the same page.
Okay.
Again, alignment, right? Transparently, I don't know what balance has looked like for me up to this point. And it has a lot to do with the responsibility and accountability that I've had for the entirety of my life, right? Having my first child going on 13 years ago, I've always been in a place of not necessarily prioritizing myself, because whether, something that I may want to do that I desire to do may have a time implication. It may have a cost implication, so on and so forth. And my priorities are making sure that I take care of the house first, which is my wife and my kids, prior to myself. So I do have a tendency to put myself on the back burner. I'm now at a place, even in me acknowledging that I don't necessarily have the balance just yet, I'm in a place where I understand the sheer importance of being able to pour into myself, because the reality is that every day is not promised. And I don't want to die feeling unfulfilled in feeding my desires. So I'm currently in that space now.
So how do you find balance in taking care of the responsibilities that you own versus feeding into yourself?
For me, again, real time in going through this, where I have come to is, and I'm good at planning. So proper planning, communicating that, and then being unforgiving when I need that time.
What do you mean by that?
Like if I plan on doing a hike in October, right? So prior to October, that date is already time stamped as a TBD, right? Hasn't yet been confirmed because I haven't purchased any tickets or this, that, and the third. As I get closer to that goal, I'll be able to fill in more blanks, but all of that is going to be communicated prior to that.
Okay.
When that time comes, do not bother me because I need this to fulfill myself.
Yeah.
I don't want to continue to be a shell of myself for the sake of making sure that everything is taken care of.
So then that's how you balance it.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Real time. I'm dealing with this. We're talking real time. That was a real situation. In October, I'm doing a hike.
A real conversation that we recently had. Like, you need to be able to do the things that fulfill you so that you can show up as your best self. And when you deny yourself from doing certain things that, you desire to do, then it builds resentment where it doesn't have to be. Just say what you need to have done, put it on the calendar, figure out, we figure out timing or childcare or whatever the situation it has to be able to do those things, because it's important.
Yeah, and you're pushing him to do that?
Yes. Go on a hike.
Get out the house.
Go. See you later. Do what you gotta do. And I committed that to myself as well, because I talked about wanting to be, I had a very social life beforehand, but I have a friend that lives 15 minutes away and I haven't seen her maybe in a year. Doesn't make any sense. She lives right down the street.
Yeah.
But I'm committing to myself that those relationships are important, being social is important to me. And so I just have to plan it out. It's not going to be every day. It's not going to be every weekend.
Mhm.
It may
What'd you
not
say,
be
babe?
every month.
You said you had to what?
Plan it out.
Oh, okay.
So
This recording, right?
It is recording.
and
Okay.
so
Okay.
what you got to say?
No, go ahead, babe.
No, go
You
ahead.
sound
No
beautiful.
innuendos. What you got to say?
No, just
You
planning.
like that you use that
It-
word
it's
plan.
Planning it out. I
It's
love hearing you
planning.
say that. You got to plan
Sometimes
it
the
out.
planning could be, a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance. As long as the responsibilities are
Oh
taken
my
care of,
Gosh.
then
That's
I
But-
think that
But again, going back to balance, right? This is the merging of two. That presents issues because then what I have found through experience is that the lack of planning burdens someone, right? And when you're married, it's typically going to burden your partner. And I think that it's a little insensitive to have those desires and not vigorously pursue those desires in a way where you could properly communicate at a point where you don't burden your partner. So
That makes sense. Why is that an issue? Why is that a problem? That's it. That's the issue. Why is that a problem?
why is it a problem? Through lack of planning, but then lack of communication as well.
Okay.
Right. And so then when something just immediately pops up, then it's like, oh, okay. I guess I have to put on the responsibility backpack again. Right. And then those
And let me ask you, Latavia, why is communicating those type of things not a problem to you, but an issue?
I don't know that it's either. I just feel for me sometimes it's a guilt. I may feel guilt around wanting to take an hour out of my day to go do something with a friend. I may feel guilt about, then I have to, it feels like a burden. I have to burden somebody else or my husband if I want to go and do XYZ. So sometimes it's like, I'm not going to communicate that I have these desires because of the guilt I feel and then the burdening that is perceived from it.
That's very insightful. Where is it that when you feel burdened or you feel guilt, that's the word, when you feel guilt, is that guilt more heavy or heavier than the responsibility that you have to be the person who does not burden him by not communicating? Because it seems like from what he's saying that there is a burden on me if you don't communicate, and you're saying I don't want to communicate it because I don't want to burden you. So it's like you're going to burden one way or the other.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'll burden you my way because I feel better that way. I'm not going to burden you the way that you say that you mind being burdened because I don't feel comfortable burdening you that way.
I mean, it's a lot of that intermixed in between.
Okay.
And it's, it comes from experience. It comes from if I receive a certain reaction, then it's going to be like, oh, I can't do this.
Right.
I don't want to do this or,
Right.
But, the perception is different, then the feelings would change.
Mm.
I receive all of that, and it sounds great. What I will say though,
that didn't sound like you received it,
Well,
nor did it sound great.
No, it didn't sound great.
I did receive it, and I do understand that from a feeling standpoint. And to tie that into how we were raised, and even how we were, or how we said we were when we were single, right? Mine was wrapped in responsibility and accountability. So I have that baked in me, the understanding of the significance of communicating, of properly planning, of this, that, and the third. She was out with her girls at the park, standing on tables and, enjoying her life, which she had every right to do at that time. But those things that may be a strength in me, she has to learn.
Don't do that. I'm not gonna let you do that. I'm not gonna let you
What
do
did
that.
I do?
I'm not gonna let you do that.
What did I do?
You were taking her experience and you were comparing it to your experience, and you're saying because my experience was A, and her experiences were 1. I'm not even going to compare the A to B because that puts an order. My experiences were A, and her experiences were 1. That because I know the alphabet, and she did not learn the alphabet. When it comes time to do the alphabet and counting, I'm just better at it than hers.
But that's not where I was going to go.
That's where you were at.
But I was gonna bring it home, right?
Okay, all right, bring it home.
In bringing it home, what I was going to say is that is the dichotomy within a marriage, and trying to merge and become one is understanding what works best for both, right? For the unit, right? And so when we're married, we're called to something higher to be better within ourselves for our marriage, right? And so we are in a growing phase, and we're still learning as we go.
Right.
However, those things then get cultivated through communication, through her. And I'm taking it back about what I was saying initially when y'all just started laughing, thinking that I was down on her. When I said it sounds good, the reason why I said, no, you're not going to do that. I don't want to hear it. The reason why I said it is because what I have learned within our relationship is that it is important for me to ask questions, because she's not as forthcoming in communicating as other people may be, as I am, right? In me asking her just recently, what I learned in asking her a direct question, do you consider yourself a planner? She said no. Now I have the opportunity to provide her more grace in that space because we've had that communication, and now she has acknowledged that might not necessarily be a strength for her. I have more opportunity to provide her grace in that now, as opposed to us not talking about it and me looking at her like you a grown woman, blah, 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 which is completely wrong.
Right. Well, okay. I'm not gonna say that, but go ahead.
that was my point, is it still comes back to like proper communication and us being able to see each other for who we are and appreciate each other.
You cleaned that up, sir. You cleaned it up.
If you gave me an opportunity,
well, I was because you was going down the path. I was like, wait a minute. Hold on. But the reason why I was saying that, I don't know if you caught it, but she said that if the response to the what did you say? The response to something was different, then the feelings might change about that.
Exactly, which is why I said what I said, is that it sounds good. The problem though is that sometimes, and I would even say, and I'm gonna just say sometimes because I don't want to get into who's right or wrong. The response could seemingly be warranted when there has not been communication in that space to then provide more grace through acknowledgement. Because I'm looking at my wife.
Hold on. The response in that space has not been. Say that again.
It's warranted.
The response in those situations where I may have not had the most tasteful reaction. Could arguably be warranted because there was a lack of communication prior to that, where there is a certain level of expectation. And we've already been moving in this way.
Got it.
We've already been lock and step. How could you fall off in this area? But now I understand that planning is not a strength of hers. So I can provide her with more grace in that area.
And I would say add to your grace the addendum of emotional safety. That's it. Emotional safety.
Boom.
Add to that space because you are very, very good on the structural programmatics of planning and responsibility and accountability. And where you can add to that grace is the emotional safety when the standard for programming is not met to your standard. And it invokes a feeling of share with me your concerns, issues, questions, this, that, and the third, so that I can get a better standing about what the plan is, so I can help you plan. And the safety that comes with doing it wrong. You understand what I mean?
Or different. Different because
I was speaking his language, because to you that's wrong. To him it's wrong.
But I was
I would say that it is different. It's not wrong at all, because I acknowledge that everybody is different. right? We're not designed.
Well, you had just
equally.
talked about giving grace to her because she's not a planner.
Yes.
So in that scope, her not planning is not different. It's just not right. I won't call it wrong. It's just not right.
Her not planning is a missed opportunity to accept the calling to be called higher, because we are now a unit. We are married. I am called to a higher level and position in life, and she is too.
Yeah.
And you can't run from that because we married now.
Right.
You see what I mean? And but the only way that we have an opportunity to pour on grace is through communication and saying, baby, I don't have it. This is my weakness. I'm just being completely transparent.
That's not the only way.
Okay.
That's not the only way.
And I want to learn from you guys.
And the other way is to create the environment where you can have grace while learning.
You are absolutely correct.
So to your point, there's grace that needs to happen in doing, and there's grace that needs to happen in the learning of doing.
You are absolutely correct. The variable with that I don't want to say the issue, because it's not an issue, it's an opportunity, right? The other variable that does not get spoken about is my upbringing and how I am affected emotionally, right? And so because I was raised in an environment of chaos, if I'm perceivably accepting more chaos, I'm not open to being vulnerable in a sense of creating a safe space, because my world is getting shook, right? So I don't feel safe.
That's real.
I don't feel like I can come and open up or, provide a hand, because I feel like I don't have, if I were to reach out for a hand, it's not available, right? And so because I feel that way, I'm still growing and working on how to connect more emotionally to allow that safe space transparently. I'm growing.
That's real. And I think that's I think the same thing that I said about you would say to Latavia about creating that space of the grace of not knowing, of doing it incorrectly. One of the things that, and we had talked about this in another podcast, is that I've learned how to read her emotions and learn how to adjust the environments that affect her emotions masterfully. And so if I know that she's going to feel whatever about any situation, I can say, okay, how is that a situation going to affect her feelings? Let me adjust that, because that will affect her feelings, and not me trying to say you shouldn't feel this way, or you need to change, or you need to do this. And so what I'm hearing from both of you all is that there's an environment that is created in the conversation around planning and sharing information, sharing plans, where when plans are shared, there's not a safety in there's not a safety in the issues and the problems that are created from those plans. Like, you don't want to cause a burden, but it's causing a burden. But you rather do your burden than his burden, because his burden comes with another burden that you don't feel like being burdened with. And the fact that she's creating these burdens is now conflict, which triggers you. And it's like, chaos. That's a burden, and it's chaos. And so I need to now protect myself by double downing on the plans and the strategies, which is a strength of mine. I see it all. What is the solution to that is the grace that needs to be given in the space to be sensitive to each other's concerns. And I know that is a very loose, non-tangible thing to do and say, but I don't know how else to say. You have to allow someone to be wrong. And that's why I said it that way, because even though you don't perceive you as wrong, and you don't perceive you as wrong, to each other, y'all wrong.
And I think it's grace and empathy. And maybe that's where the perception of wrong comes from. You can empathize with their experience and upbringing, a way of doing things, but also honor yourself as well in that space. So let me give you grace because I know this is how you grew up. I know this is how you may normally react to things. But I can also empathize with you so that the goal can be accomplished, and not it being a person that's being right or wrong. It's like differences in approach. But I do agree with Sean. Like, you know, when you're in a marriage, you're supposed to be called up.
Yeah.
And to be with someone who is helping you to be in that better space. But it's a dance of knowing when it's your turn to lead or your turn to listen, or when there needs to be grace or when there needs to be empathy.
That's the balance we're talking about. That's the balance we're talking about, which is why you said empathy to something about when it's your turn to
lead
or listen. You said something else that I wanted to comment on, but I can't remember exactly how you phrased it. But I think it was, here's the mindset that I think both of you should approach it with is, okay, in this time of you sharing your plans, how can I serve Sean by making a plan for him so that he's not burdened? How can I serve Sean by doing something that you don't do well, but how can I serve him by doing that? And if you approach the communication or the plans that you have, or like, how can I serve my husband? I have these plans. I want to do this. I feel guilty about it, but how can I serve my husband by sharing this with him? If you approach it from that position, then that puts you in the right mind space to be responsible for your responsibility to be called up and to serve him and to do something that's not intrinsically you're good at, or you prefer not. I'm not gonna say you're not good at doing it. You intrinsically don't want to do, you prefer not to do. I'll say that. And in that way, he can see the effort. Likewise, in the space of you wanting to hear plans and then wanting to create a space for her to share with you, be like, how can I serve my wife in creating the space for her to do what she wants to do without her feeling guilty? If you approach each other's from that side, you take the responsibility off of each other from having to do what you're protecting yourselves from your spouse. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And on top of that, I think you both need to, when you're doing that, you need to be open to having that grace you were talking about, and be open that it may not look or feel like you want it to feel. So you'll be able to accept it and value what you're receiving as what you need, and not
That's
like
good.
what you really, what you want to happen. It should be this way, but you both need to be open to the differences of what it might look like. Sorry.
Yes, received and amen.
Because one of the things, just to give an example of how we did it, one of the things, I think this is early on in our marriage, I can't remember the specifics because it was so long ago, but in general, one of the things that I used to do for Bernie, because I know that she was more emotional than I was, and it was very, very difficult for me to manage to deal with the different variations of emotions that she would go through. And so I made it my responsibility to go to her and sit and not have any opinions, which was difficult. And that was my way of serving her, by giving her the space to just let it all out. Sometimes she didn't really say that much, but sometimes she would say stuff and then she'd come back and then say something, and then she'd go away and be like, and then come back, and I would just be like, and then what happened? Oh, really? And so that was me learning, and that's not something that I had done before. That was me learning how to, okay, let me give her the space to get all that stuff out, because she apparently needs that right now. Mm-hmm. I don't care at all what she's talking about or what she's saying. It's not of interest to me. But what is of interest to me is making sure that I create for her an environment where she feels like she can get that stuff off of her.
Probably was work.
It was work.
I'm sure it was work.
Work in church.
Oh.
Work in church.
I'm sure it was those
and
two
so
things.
It was like, okay, so what eventually ended up happening was the way that our relationship was formed later on, and I'm talking about year 14, this is like year 1 we were doing this. Year 14, our relationship, because we didn't have any children, and I was always doing something in ministry, and Bernie was doing her thing in ministry, but we were doing different things. Our relationship was solidified more by us coming back together and talking about the stories that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, and what happened in this ministry? And then because I had the history doing it, I'm like, but didn't she do that last month? Didn't she so-and-so? Yeah, I know, right? And so our gel became, okay, I get to come home from me serving as a deacon and the elder, come home from these elders meetings. I used to come home, lay on her lap. She would rub my head, and I would just pour out all what happened. And then she would tell me what happened in praise and worship rehearsal because she was over praise and worship. And so she had to deal with the stuff that's over being in praise and worship. And so it was like, our relationship got stronger because we were able to share our stories. And it all started from me setting the precedent of putting myself in the space of just listening and about stuff I did not care about because I wanted to serve her. And it was only because I wanted to serve her. So that's an example.
Understood.
That's good.
Wow, that was number 1. So we're going to do one more because we definitely won't have time for... So some examples of that are the cultural influences and expectations, social expectations, social media influences, external opinions about certain things, cancel culture, political pressure, all those things, church culture, and then parental advice, couples group advice, all those things that are external to your immediate family that are weighing and vying for you influence in your life. And when I say influence, I mean the things that try to persuade you to do things that they feel are beneficial for either themselves or for you. This was a challenge when I was doing the research because social media primarily and what people and how people feel the need to comport themselves based upon what social influences are on social media. And especially when you talk about like the whole relationship space about traditional values versus modern values and those kind of things. How is that? Is that a area where, well, I'll say it this way, because some people don't care about social expectations. They be like, I'm going to do me, and that's just what it is. But then there's some people that are like, no, we should do this because it's right to do. It's the right thing to do. Well, says who? Well, it's what people say. They say that you should do so and so. So how has social challenges or social expectations or social influences impacted your relationship and required you to have to balance certain things? Or adjust, that's the word we're using, adjust certain things.
I don't know if that specific subtopic is an issue for our relationship. I would say one, because I'm not really on social media too much. So if I am on social media, it's like me scrolling and then kind of realizing that I've fallen into the rabbit hole and then I jump off. But as far as like posting or like being truly engaged, that's not me. Tavia is
now you'll post a picture of a scripture verse. Well, you were doing that on the group me for Millie Connect for years.
Yes, right. But okay, so I separate those two. Right?
Okay,
because when we talk about faith, yes, I in the past, not recently, because I just have focus on the family.
Right.
But I think that it's truly important for us to utilize social spaces such as that to pour into each other. Like it has to be a balance and something fruitful.
Yeah.
Right. So I definitely would agree with that from that standpoint. But as far as like what you would stereotypically see from social media, whether it be like the advertisement of a good life for everybody all the time, so on and so forth, I kind of realized for myself immediately that sent me into a space of chasing what was not necessarily for me. Speaking more so like monetarily. Okay. Like people be going on vacations all the time.
Don't they
people
be out there?
Living, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like I don't get it. And so it sent me down like a path that I definitely don't want to go down. So I would say from my end, that's not necessarily an issue for us.
But that is the social media dynamic. But then you also have family. You also have church expectations and stuff like that. So have any of those external challenges have caused you to adjust in any type of way? And I don't know, Latavia, you can speak to it.
I would say yes, especially in regards to ministry. We met each other in ministry.
Okay.
I was very involved. He became very involved in ministry. And then that became what, especially through the pandemic, that's what our focus was in the house. So there was no separation between what was ministry and what we were working on in ministry and our family
during
goals.
Ministry, y'all were during the pandemic, y'all doing ministry stuff at home?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
Even think about your 9 to 5. It wasn't a 9 to 5 anymore. It was a 12 to
exactly.
You might wake up at 3:30 doing work.
Okay.
Because you don't have a clock out time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and so we definitely were doing that with ministry.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was something that we had to really learn how to manage well and even bow out in some spaces because it was taking so much time and energy away from things that we were personally trying to focus on within our family. It's like all of our time and energy was going to ministry. There's a meeting at 5 different times of the day, and either I'm on it or he's on it, or both of us are on it, and that's taken away from time with our kids too.
Yeah.
And so we had to really, and the balance largely was to step away from so many roles so that we could step into the roles that we needed to step into within our family.
How was that?
Especially given the fact that we still are what I consider like the pivotal years. Like we haven't hit our 5-year benchmark yet, right? And so we still have to develop the dynamic of what we want our family to look like.
Right.
So
how was that? How was that pulling away from? Because I talked about the adjustments of where there's something that actually is taking away from something else. So how was that pulling away? How did that look like for y'all?
Well, one, I am no longer employed by the church.
Okay.
So
you were working for the church?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know.
Were you working? Let me rephrase. Were you working for the church or were you working at the church?
For.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't have to. You meaning like I having to go in somewhere physically?
No, I mean like you know
check.
how like
I was receiving a check.
Your full-time joint was at the church. Was
part-time.
Okay, so you were working at the church.
Oh,
part-time but full-time.
That's how they do
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts. They be full-time and they be like, can you? And you feel like,
and when you're
ministry.
a doer and you are passionate about what you're working in, you gonna say yes a lot of the times, but your yes is saying no to other things.
Right.
My yes to ministry was saying no to personal time with me and my husband.
Yeah.
Time away from our kids and just.
And I differentiated full-time working for the church as a full-time, you work for the church or you work part-time at the church. That's how I differentiated, but
as well as the volunteering, right?
The volunteering is a whole nother situation.
Yeah, because Tavia was on part-time.
That's also working at the church.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So Tavia was part-time, and so there was a certain obligation that came with that because you're getting paid, right? Whereas for me, I was completely a volunteer, but I was a high capacity volunteer.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was still the can you. And I had not yet learned the healthy boundary for myself of when to say no.
Okay.
Or when to ask why.
How did you learn that? Or did you learn it yet?
Get into a place of burnout. Absolutely.
Okay.
You asked the question about, am I still a minister? I had to confirm that, right? But the reality of it was that we both had gotten to a place of burnout where not only were we getting off of calls and bringing that energy into the house because we were still talking about it or we felt a certain way, so on and so forth. But then the kids, I felt bad because the kids, rightfully so, were asking for their time and I had to say no in their time because I have a meeting or I have to prep, so on and so forth, right? And so we got to a place of burnout where we just had to say enough is enough. We know that it's still in our heart, which I, am still a minister. And I actually just recently, as of yesterday, jumped back in to swim, quote unquote, through volunteering. But we had to take a step back and kind of recalibrate on what our family dynamic was going to look like, because I've heard so many stories. I mean, even from the great senior Keith Battle, right? Senior Pastor Keith Battle, just talking about how, he had so many years of being married that were terrible.
Right.
And it was because he was just trudging ahead with work. And there were certain things that were being neglected by default just because you only have 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
And you have to decide how you choose that. And one thing that one of my mentors asked me that kind of changed my mindset within that season of burnout was, what are you not willing to fail at? And I'm not willing to fail at my family. I'm not willing to fail at being continually striving to be a great partner. That's something that I'm not going to compromise. So we have to then build around that of what I can do.
Y'all created some margins. You remember that sermon he was
Absolutely.
that was a good
That
sermon.
sermon helped me a lot.
Yeah, I was like, I live in margins, so I don't really have a problem.
How did you all? I think you kind of answered it, but I throw it open to you, Latavia, for you to comment also. How did you all identify, like, okay, we are being taxed on both ends by these external challenges, external forces, and it's church external forces. So it's kind of tied to your like purpose, passion, ministry. God said do it, but then, I feel guilty for not doing it. At least that's how I felt. I felt guilty for not doing stuff. And I've had stories over and over the decades of how many times I've been to church and so forth, and felt and have felt guilty for not going to church, and just went and then let other things go to the wayside. But how did you all manage that seesaw of deciding to choose yourselves over the church, which seems kind of wrong, but or the household?
I think that what allowed us to identify that there was no margin was that there were arguments that would occur because of the work that we were doing. And it's kind of like a reality. God doesn't want us to be in quarrel about this, argument about this thing.
Exactly.
We should be, working together or, smiling in these environments and happy to serve. And when we were identifying that it would cause maybe an argument between us, maybe how something was being done or whatever it was, or that we were really saying no to ourselves so much to a point where there was like bitterness that was starting to present itself.
Bitterness because of the external forces, and that you were not choosing yourself over the external forces, or bitterness because between the two of you all, because he was choosing the external force and you not giving me the time.
I think it would be both.
Okay.
I would say both. The bitterness against the external forces, and the fact that, you want another meeting again, or you got another meeting again, or we could be doing this at this time, or, we have a desire to be, reading or completing a book or devotional ourselves, but we are putting all this energy outside of us. Like, yes, it's good things that are feeding us, but is it in the right season, or are we putting the right amount of time to it? And so us kind of identifying those things allowed us to see that there needed to be some change there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say I agree with all of that. I would say outside of that, for me, it was allowing myself an opportunity, unfortunately through burnout, but fortunately going through that to then understand that I did need to take a step back. So allowing myself an opportunity to actually step back and get out of the rat race of trudging ahead and being a workhorse, but then being able to look at things more holistically, so that even though I still deal with certain guilt, because responsibility actually is one of my Clifton strengths, right? And so that's a high on my principles in life, right? And so I counteract that quote unquote guilt with being able to assess my wins along the way.
Okay.
So
that's
being
good.
able to assess the wins of the development of the kids, the time that we're able to spend together.
That's
the
really good,
time
Sean.
that we're able to spend together.
That's really good.
Like if I have to, pick the not lesser of two evils, but if I have to lose in this area, at least I'm winning in this, and I don't plan on losing in this.
How do you? Y'all saw the Kurt Franklin Father's Day video? Did you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. So we did a whole podcast on it last year, and one of the points I made was whenever you have a great ministry assignment, there is great sacrifice that you have to experience and your family will experience. And we went through the annals of scripture and looked at all of the people who were great men and women of God who had to sacrifice themselves or their families had to sacrifice as a result of the ministry assignment that they've been given. And so it's not lost. Even when you talked about Pastor Battle, who has a great ministry assignment and the challenges that he went through his marriage throughout the process. So there is an understandable, and God also, and we talked about in the beginning, how God be taking you through challenges so that he can test the authenticity and the genuineness of your faith. So how do you balance the challenge that God is sending you through to grow you and mature you, versus like, okay, this is too much for the family. We need to prioritize our family and step away from this ministry assignment?
I would say that this is still current time, right? Like I just acknowledged that I just recently kind of jumped back in the water to swim. And so what I realized was that was the only way that I was going to the only way that I could swim in ministry, quote unquote, is to jump back in the water. Right? Sitting on the sidelines is I'm going to be stagnant in that.
Okay.
However, I'm confident in knowing that is an itch that I have to continually scratch for me, because that is an assignment that I know is from God for me. So it's not going to go anywhere. And so I guess to kind of answer your question, I am finding more comfort in the understanding of where I'm not willing to fail, which is my family, being a husband, so on and so forth, but being completely confident in what God is calling me to. And so understanding that he's going to provide the margin and the ability for me to obtain both.
Okay.
Regardless of the time frame that it takes.
That's what you just said is very key. The time frame in which it takes, because that sometimes is the expectation that we have to do these things within a certain period of time, because God is wanting us to do this. This is the opportunity that presents itself, or like I'm not getting any younger, or the opportunity is here now, and so I got to jump on it. And it's going to be hard work, but then you end up having to sacrifice all these other things. And that was one of the things that, and I'm gonna come to you real quick, Latavia, but that was one of the things when we were coming up, we were really focused on the pace. At least I wasn't. I'll say I wasn't. I wasn't focused on the pace at which we were doing all the things, because we were doing all the things at the same time. And it was like, we got to do it. And it wasn't a situation where we like, let's take some time for ourselves. Because then I felt guilty for taking time for myself. But that pace thing is what I learned later on, is that, and Bernie helped me with this.
Because I was, every time when you were saying we're going doing this, I was like, can we just sit down for a minute?
Yeah, I just didn't like to sit down for a minute.
I know.
Why? We're here to do that.
I just want to chill for a second.
This is what he's called us to do. But I learned now, we're going to be doing this now, and we're going to be doing this later. So, but yeah, go ahead, Latavia.
I would say you definitely, or I have had to learn better planning and having more realistic expectation, because just like you said, the life that you're living before you're responsible for other people, you can pile all of that stuff on you.
Right.
But I think it took me becoming a biological parent to see that you don't have to get everything done, and you can still have your to-do list, and maybe that line item needs to be prioritized to another day, but do what you can in the moment. And as long as you're still, even if it's small things, working towards, the calling that God has over your life, your career goals, your financial goals, as long as you're continuing to pay attention to it and put time into it intentionally, that it doesn't have to like adjust your expectation of when it's going to be accomplished.
That's
because
Mm-hmm.
you know, you don't have to build the $1 million business overnight, and it's not going to happen that way
Right.
for the majority.
In spite of what
us.
social media make it seem like it happens.
Exactly.
Right.
That social media will have you thinking that you're behind the time.
Yeah.
And it's
Exactly.
like, no, God is still trying to allow you to experience the things that you need to experience to be able to be an expert in this
Right.
area.
Mhm.
So it might take time.
Right.
I purposely do not look at certain business clips because they make it seem like all you gotta do is just sign up for this class and then you'll have $1 million business. I'm like, okay, I tried the class before that and I didn't. It didn't work
happen.
because
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into that. There's also timing, and there's also God being like, nope, that's not where I'm calling you to yet.
Yeah.
And I want you to go through these things now. And I didn't know that before. That's when we started our business in the boot camp back at the other house. I was like, okay, it's gonna blow up. We're gonna be able to retire off of this. No, sir.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You're gonna continue to work every day.
For some people,
Yeah.
maybe it's not for you
Right.
Yes.
to be the
Exactly.
millionaire.
Exactly.
Maybe your impact is going to be presented in another area, and you just have to accept what is and
Mhm.
constantly be seeking God's voice on that. Because
Right.
if you're looking at social media, you're comparing yourself to what everybody else is doing. It can be, you know, I'm trying to get out of debt. And
Right.
it didn't happen within this year or 2 years or 3 years. Maybe it might be a 5 to 10 year
Right.
for, you know, for some people.
Right.
But just know that your path is your path. And you got to be in tune to what God has for you so that your expectations aren't exceeding what his expectations are for you.
Right.
I have a question.
Like how you find a husband. Come on now.
Yeah.
Because you were like, I'm not guess I'm not gonna be married. Oh, look, lo and behold.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a question, and I'm gonna say, well, to both of you, but specifically you, because we have conversations about this, and I think that we are a lot alike in this area. But it's two-sided, right? We were talking about the external and the impact that social media or society may have. But what about the internal? How do you balance the ambition that you have and the drive that you have that was
That's good.
given to you by God,
Right.
right? But how do you balance that, right? To then still achieve the goal of meeting your purpose that God has set out for you. But it's like, well, why did you give me all of this, God, if you don't want me to do anything with it? To your point about like, everybody's not meant to be a millionaire. I truly believe that I am.
Yeah.
Right. And it's because of what he has embedded in me. And it might not necessarily be right now, but if I'm seeing all of these visions and I'm seeing all of these different things that I know can come to fruition, how do you organize that to be able to maintain a certain level of peace as you're doing life?
Sure. It's two things. One is understanding your purpose, and you pursue purpose, not the result of purpose. Understanding wisdom came over time. I pursue the purpose that I'm doing and let the results be the results, and not focus on the dollar amount of $1 million, but the impact of the people whose lives I am called to serve, in whatever arena that is for you. And so that is one. Even in that, I still was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And then that's where I'm going to get my $1 million. But then what I realized was, and you talked, I think one of you all mentioned it before about the pacing. I changed the metric of the pace that we should move based upon the buy-in that I have from my wife. And that was a key, because low key, I felt like, she's slowing me down. I can move faster if I just did it by myself. Still feel that way in some regard, in some areas. But I have accepted that over the 26 years of marriage and 24 years of ministry, that our collective build is the thing that God is pleased with. And our collective build is the thing that helps people, not my part in it. It's not my part that God's pleased with. And like Bernie can do that too, which is sometimes kind of how I felt and sometimes kind of how I moved. But it's like, no, the collective work that we both are doing, that's what God wants us to do. And so don't try to do this yourself, young man, because I brought y'all together for a reason. And it's the collective work that you all do, because you wouldn't have this knowledge and wisdom without her. Even though you think that you're supposed to move at a certain pace, you're not. Because what's more important is that when we move and we move in a space and we share what we share and we say what we say, be it online or in a one-on-one group, is that after we finish saying it and then the people go home or the cameras go off, we still good.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's more important. What vexes me so is when you have and this happened with gospel singers, Fred Hammond specifically. Shout out to Fred Hammond now, but at one point in time, I was boycotting Fred Hammond because when he was getting divorced, I was like, how are you going to have ministry songs that are changing the lives of millions of people, that people are just going up and praise and worship while your home is jacked up? Like, what is going on at home? Like, could you have not made that album and then took care of your home more so than like being out on the road, making that album, ministering to millions of people, but your wife is back home upset, mad, angry, to the point where y'all get divorced?
Mm-hmm.
I would have rather you not done one album that ministered to me and be married than to have that album and be divorced. Yeah. But that's just my standard that I put on him. So I was like, I'm not listening to any more Fred Hammond songs. And then I heard that he put himself underneath submission of Bishop Jakes and repented. Like, okay, I will now start listening to Fred again. But I think what's for me, I realize that it's not my ministry, it's our ministry, and we got to be good after it's all done. So the peace that we have and the tranquility that we have and the way that we need to move together is the pace that's best for our marriage. Otherwise, it's going to be my pace and it's going to vex her. And that's how I determined, that's how I had peace with the pace that we had to move. So if the $1 million come, because my thing was I was going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. And that happened. That was a long time ago. And so that has not happened yet. And I no longer look at that metric as my purpose now. That the metric is the pace. And okay, can we, like, one of the real things that's going, I'll let you talk in a second. One of the real things that we're talking, that we're going through now is we sold the house in 2022. We've been here for a year and some change. And now I feel like, okay, now we need to go to the next thing so that we can fulfill the purpose that he's called us to do. And this is just a temporary respite. And so now we need to go next. So our lease is up in May, in a couple months. And she's like, we need to stay here 2 more years. I'm like, 2 years? So it's
I still got PTSD from the last move.
I'm like, but we need to move soon because we have purpose to pursue. But she's like, I'm going to stay 2 years. And I was like, So we have not settled on whether it will be a year, 2 years, or what that time is. But I know that the pace that we have to move is best for our marriage. It may not be her pace. It may not be my pace, but that's what we have to figure out, what God is like allowing us to experience and allow us to go through. Yeah. That was a long version. Go ahead,
was going to say about the $1 million and the way we were pursuing, like, even though we have this purpose, and when we were pursuing like the money part of it, that was the first thought. I remember when we made the shift, or kind of you made the shift, where it was more about the service, and you kind of mentioned this. It was more about the service and how we were affecting people, and that was more important to us than us making $1 million. And when we made that shift, it was God just seemed to like just put us in certain places and move us in a certain way that it never would have happened had our focus been on trying to get the money. Mm-hmm. And so it's always about how does he get the glory in what you're doing? Because that's just the bottom line. Yeah. In anything you're doing together, or the purpose, it's always like, how is he going to get the glory from what you're doing?
And you don't need the money to buy the things that God can give you with favor.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I've been thinking, we need money so we can do this. No, you can get favor, and then you can get that.
And you're in a space that
and you never even planned on being there. Yeah. But you had the favor to get there because God said, I don't need your money.
Yeah.
And you don't need $1 million to do these things.
Do you, Bernie, do you feel that maybe a strength that you bring to the relationship is being able to balance Heath's ambition out by slowing him down in places to stop and smell the roses, to enjoy life, to bring laughter, to
yeah, I mean, I think, but I think my strength is slowing him down and balancing, not necessarily to like enjoy the roses and do all that
I
stuff.
do that myself.
Right, because he likes to go and he plans all the trips and all that kind. So he likes doing that stuff. I just go along. I enjoy myself though when I go, but I think I slow down some like with his ambition. Sometimes it's too much, and so maybe it needs to like go in spurts, or even just our plans on like even when we used to have boot camps at the other house where people be doing team building. What he would have down for the people to do in those woods, I was like, that's too much. They can't do all that. You know, you need to pull some of that back. So I balance because he has so much in his mind and he wants everybody to do all these things. And when I look at it, I'm like, there's no way. So I think that's my strength because of the things that he would want people to do.
That is true.
Sometimes it's just too much. And I pull him back from
naturally that. With how y'all are designed, you may help to like refine a lot of his plans and ambition just because of who you naturally are.
Yeah.
I'll say so. Edit.
Okay.
Yeah, edit. I do edit a lot.
Edit is a better word than refine.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now on the Sean and Tavia show, so how does that affect you? The editing, how do you deal with that internally and externally? How do you deal with the editing along the way?
I don't like it, but I realize when I don't edit, when I don't heed her edits sometimes, she's right and it is too much. It is more, this is important. It affects the experience that the people that we're ministering to have so that they don't get the maximum out of it because I tried to pour too much into it so that it would be good. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's, this would be good. Like even today, I was like, we got 5 topics we're going to cover. I was like, this is probably too much because it's probably going to be rich with, 1 or 2, just enough. But me knowing Bernie, I was like, I'm writing all these things down. And in my mind, we can do all this. But then I was like, Bernie's going to see it. And then she's going to be like, this is too much. So when I sent it to her, I was like, it's probably too much. And even when I started out, I was like, it's probably too much. So I have accepted that I'd be doing too much sometimes.
And I said, we're probably going to get through 1 or 2 of those because that is too much.
Yeah. And so what I didn't like it at first, to answer your question. I thought she was stifling. I thought she really didn't have the gumption or the drive that I have. And then I realized she doesn't have the drive that I have.
That's not how God made me.
And that's not how God made her. Mm-hmm. You know why? Because that's how he made me. Mm-hmm. I'm the one who has the drive. And she follows, providing that I lead according to according to a pace that's good for her.
Hallelujah.
And so I had to learn that pace needed to be slower than what I want to go.
Yeah.
But it's faster than what she wants to go. So the end result is other people are impacted optimally with that pace. Mm-hmm. And that's what gives me the peace to be like, okay, we'll do it your way.
Yeah. I can appreciate
I know that we can do it my way and it'll be just fine. But then I'm ignoring facts. I'm ignoring data.
Yeah. I can appreciate that, all of that. Thank you for that, because that I think that we have a similar dynamic, but of course you guys have a lot more experience together. And so we, have been provided a little window into what could be. Yeah. So I appreciate that. I will say I commend you though in doing too much.
Okay.
Because of all of your effort, you now have alleviated yourself of the potential burden for the part 2. You've already done the work. right? So next time we come back for part 2, it's already set up. So I appreciate
that
you,
is
brother.
true. That is true. And I probably would do more. I'll try to do extra. Like, yeah, but
It turns into
we
something
can talk
else.
about this too. And then I'll throw it by Bernie, and she'd be like, I don't know. It'd be too much. Yeah, that's
just
how.
edit.
So that's how it works. And I don't. And here's the thing. I don't edit me. I still do Heath, because in Heath's mind, Heath can do this. But that's why she's here, to be like, okay, we can do it, but maybe we shouldn't do this, or maybe you should do that. So I'm like, okay, this is how it works. I do me, and then she does her, and then y'all get what y'all get, and y'all get what y'all get.
Understand.
One of the questions that we do ask is, do you have any advice from your big 3 years that you would have for other couples that are in your space, blended married, very small kids, and preteens?
Blended family.
That's what I said.
I missed that.
Blended marriage. Blended family. And then, just people who are kind of walking your path, or either about to walk your path. Any advice that you would have for them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and some things I'm actively doing, some things I am just getting to the realization of the importance of. But I would say, identify who your accountability partners are, who your inner circle is, and then outside of that, you have your godly community, right?
That's good.
But identify your accountability partners who you can be completely vulnerable with, transparent with, and who can call you on your BS. Identify that inner circle, people that are walking the same walk as you, that can share in experiences, and essentially like a small group, quote unquote, but people who you can grow with and do life with. That and so those fall under the bigger umbrella of just finding healthy outlets, right? The thing that I have not yet gotten into, but that I am actively seeking, is what will feed me personally, my own desires and my wants for myself, like hunting, fishing, camping, tactical shooting. I need to make time for those things.
Right.
That's who I've always been. That's who I'm going to be. Riding dirt bikes, riding 4-wheelers. Let me find a safe space for those things, right?
We're gonna do an RV trip this summer to do some of those things. I'm not down with the hunting, but we're gonna do an RV trip this summer to do that.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
You don't gotta hold me to it, because I said we're gonna do it.
And then I'm gonna push you in other spaces to stretch yourself, because you're going to enjoy, because I know who you are.
Okay.
So you're going to enjoy yourself.
All right. Okay.
And so I would just say, finding healthy outlets, right? I would also say, and so like that was the answer. How I got to that though is, perfectly it will help somebody. Personally, I don't subscribe to having expectations for anybody else besides myself. I feel like when you have expectations for people that are made of flesh, made of bone, they're imperfect, you set yourself up automatically for disappointment, resentment, so on and so forth. And so I say that to say, I only have hopes and desires for other people, specifically my wife. Now, prayerfully, those hopes and desires are expressed hopes and desires, right? As opposed to the other side, which is unexpressed. When it's unexpressed, the only thing that I can do is just suck it up, right? That gives me the gauge of, well, did I express it? Did I not express it? If I didn't express it, I can only just suck that up and go back to the drawing board to recalibrate how I then present moving forward. For the expressed hopes and desires, what I'm learning that got me to the space of finding healthy outlets for yourself, it is learning how to divorce yourself of the feeling that comes with the disappointment when those expressed hopes and desires are not met.
Right.
Right. And that's what keeps us together, is by me having healthy outlets that I'm able to still be able to feed myself and then come back to the relationship better and and present myself whole for the benefit of us.
Yeah. That's a very interesting point that you made. And I think it's good when you don't have those desires met by your spouse, that and not just talking about you and Latavia, or me and Bernie, but couples, because your spouse can't be all those things to you that you would want them to be. You have to get those from other people, and other venues. And we've, over our marriage, when we've relied on other external entities and avenues to fulfill a need that was not being met by one another, and that in a safe, healthy kind of way. You know what I mean? And so that, what we realized was helpful. And that's, when we come back and share the stories, that connection of the stories is what actually strengthened our relationship in a different way than we thought that it was ever going to do it. So that's a very good point. Latavia.
My advice would be, everybody's always working on themselves, and there are versions of yourselves that you don't necessarily want to bring into your marriage or relationship because, you've been delivered from it. It's not productive or healthy or whatever it is. But I would say to truly be yourself when you're dating, when you're engaged, when you're married, because when you get married, there's things that are going to come up.
Yeah.
Like you can't just push down anymore. And so just be your true and authentic self and communicate your weaknesses and your strengths and areas that you struggle with or things that are triggering, so that your partner knows how to support you and knows how to respond, but you can also allow them to sharpen you in those areas as well.
Very good.
Yeah.
That was very good.
That's my advice.
If y'all heard that, y'all govern yourselves accordingly. But thank you all for coming to the Heathen Bernie Show. This was a great conversation. I knew we wouldn't get past everything because Bernie has programmed me to think that I do too much and I'd be doing too much. And so, but we would love to have you back to discuss some more. Absolutely. I probably will have a completely different agenda, but that's okay.
I'll just edit that too.
Yeah, she will. But we enjoyed the conversation. Very good, very stimulating. And we hope that you all enjoyed it as well. There's a lot of stuff that we shared here. And if you have any comments or agreements or disagreements with anything that Bernie and I've said or LaShawn and Tavia said, please put that in the comments. We'd love to see what you have to say about that. So please like and subscribe to our channel. Our intent is to share content that will help newly married couples navigate these tricky transitions and make the appropriate adjustments as necessary. So until the next time, we get at you later. Peace.
Bye.